Yo, GooTube, Chemo here, and I'm just gonna show off a couple of albums I picked up over the weekend. Um, First one is a band that nobody knows about in the death metal scene, only I do. It's a band that nobody knows about. It's a band named Autopsy. Uh, yeah, I saw this for like $12, and I couldn't help myself, and I figured it's pretty much like three albums in one, which is their full length, uh, which is their third full length album. So yeah, it's their full length, and then it has the Fiend for Blood EP, and it has like 10 bonus tracks on it. So I was like, for $12, out of all the Autopsy albums, like when it comes to like their old school stuff, I think this is Acts of the Unspeakable is probably the only one I haven't heard just yet. So it'll be new to my ears. Um, should be interesting. An interesting listen. So, yeah, I'm just trying to unwrap this shit with one hand. Um, why do they gotta make this crap so fucking impossible to unwrap? Like, it's like, don't worry, a 3-year-old's not gonna. I'm sure he'll look at this and just run away from it. He's not gonna try to open it. But yeah, there's the album. It came with a cute little side note slip and just giving you a little update on the band and how the album came together, shit like that. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. It'll be new to my ears, so can't complain on that part. Um, trying to make this quick because I feel every video I make lasts fucking 15 minutes. Here's another score that I just couldn't help but get. It's a 2-disc set of a death metal band named Ackercock, and it was for like $16. And in my brain, I was like, well, $16, two full-length albums, so that ends up. So I'm pretty much paying $8 an album, and I was like, well, why the fuck not? I just couldn't. Uh, there's a Barnes and Noble in McAllen off the expressway, which is the only Barnes and Noble I've ever been to that actually cares about death metal and like black metal and like weird fucking music like that. And they had this 2 CD set of Ackercock for $16, and I was like, dude, I'm like, that's coming home with me right now. And again, if I can fucking get these albums out with one goddamn hand. This is the first album I ever heard by Ackercock. Words that go unspoken, deeds that go undone. And I heard first time I heard it, I was at a friend's house, and we were having some kind of party, a few years ago. And a friend of mine just threw this on, and he's like, "Hey, have you ever heard of this band named Ackercock?" And I was like, Cock who?" And yeah, I had never heard of the band. And when he threw this on, it kind of, I had never really heard death metal kind of in that manner, where it can be going 1,000 miles an hour and just kind of calm down and throw in the clean vocals, and it fits. It doesn't feel off. It doesn't seem weird or awkward or whatever. So yeah, I got these two albums, pretty much for $8 a piece, like in a 2-disc set bundle, majig crap. So it's that album, and it's Koranzun. I haven't heard of this album. And their first album that I ever did own, I bought like a couple months ago, which is their most recent album that came out in 2017. Renaissance in Extremis. That album's fucking crazy. That album, there was a lot of haters that were bitching about the vocals and how they came out on that album, but I think that album, their newest one, Renaissance in Extremis, is pretty fucking dope. and I really like the lyrical, like the lyrical, like the subject matter that's going on in that album. It's not about, you know, eating someone's face or chopping someone's ear off or eating someone's fucking leg as if it's a pork chop. It's not nothing about that. It's just a really fucking deep album. If you haven't heard Renaissance and Extremis by Ackercock, you need to check that shit out. Unless you're gonna be like, oh, but the vocals are weird, and then they're clean, and then they're kind of low, and then they're high, and then they're guttural, and then they're clean again. Oh my God, the end of the world is near. Well, then just don't even listen to it then. But if you like death metal, kind of sprinkled with like uh, more like I can't think of the fucking word. Not not like progressive, but I don't know. I can't even explain it, but I'll end it with this. I picked this record up or ordered it online like about a week or so ago. Immolation's Failures for Gods, and I must say that this shit, upon the first listen, it sounded a bit weird, but after like your ears get used to it, you realize that a lot of bands nowadays are just very, very, very like overproduced, uh, overly saturated with like I don't know. It just sounds way too clean and robotic, like overproduced, overly compressed or auto-tuned type shit. And when you go back to the death metal that was coming out in the late 80s and like early 90s, or this one came out in 1999, you realize that that sound, that natural sounding like that natural sounding metal when it wasn't all just being recorded like on a Mac or whatever the fuck. It's that unique, weird, fucking sound that gives the album that added, like, it gives it its own element, it gives it its own character, it gives it its own atmosphere. And yeah, dude, if you have not heard this album, Failures for Gods, you need to fucking listen to it. It's like for me, in my opinion, I think it's like overlooked like death metal, like top 100 like masterpiece. Um, which is weird, yeah. Top 100 masterpiece albums. That's kind of weird, but yeah, dude. I mean, if you're listening to this album for the first time, I would recommend just don't listen to any kind of modernly, like, don't listen to, like, a Skeletal Domain by Cannibal Corpse or fucking um or something by like or like something by like the Black Dahlia Murder, which are bands that I love, but they're with Metal Blade Records, and of course their production's gonna be like top notch, of course, and there's nothing wrong with that. But if you listen to the modern production, that's kind of the way they just do it in death metal nowadays, and then you put this on, I think it's gonna sound weird. It'll sound weird to your ears. So if you haven't heard this, just go into it blind and just kind of, yeah, just give it more than one spin, because I think if on your first listen, it'll sound kind of, I don't know, it'll sound very dirty, and just in the sound of the production alone. But hear it the second time around, and just kind of, you'll learn to appreciate and even kind of miss that sound that used to come with death metal bands in the late 80s and early 90s, because you don't hear metal like that anymore. It just sounding like a natural sounding, just grit, dirt. It's imperfect. It's just what death metal should be, but unfortunately those days are gone, but fuck it, what can you do? Peace out.